Hello everyone, I'm George from Ireland. So I'm on Hertford Street in Mayfair, London, and behind me you can see the house where Richard Brinsley Sheridan lived, and no, it's not open to the public, and indeed he died in this house. So Sheridan was a renowned 18th century Irish playwright, journalist and member of Parliament, member of the British Parliament. It's only towards the end of his life that we were part of the British Parliament. So Sheridan was born in Dublin in 1751, and his father was an actor and a theatre manager of a Smock Alley theatre. His mother was a noted playwright, and I can't think of a woman before her in these islands who had a play performed. So he was from an Anglophone family. He was a communicant of the Church of Ireland, that minority of at most 20% of the Irish population who pursue these exclusionary policies towards the rest of us, excluding us from political rights and so forth, holding all the plum jobs and much of the wealth. I'm not saying it was all Sheridan's fault. To my knowledge, he wasn't particularly against that, even though his grandfather had been a Catholic from the courtier class. Sheridan, he went to an English grammar school on Grafton Street in Dublin. I mean, of course, virtually all schools were teaching principally through English in Ireland at the time, and there were hedge schoolmasters in the West who didn't have a proper school, so you should teach outside, sometimes in Irish, a bit of English too, and other languages. Anyway, the family were quite prosperous, given that running a theatre and being an actress and a writer can be a precarious business, and quite a few other notables attended that same school. The Duke of Wellington had gone to that school, and there's a plaque on Grafton Street saying where it was, but the building no longer stands. Anyway, he then went to Harrow School, which is now considered part of London, then was a village in Middlesex just north of London, Harrow on the Hill. So he enrolled at the age of 11 and stayed to the age of 18. So he was a fairly bookish boy, a very imaginative sort, but didn't want to go on to university. Perhaps the family expenses would not run to anything in the way of dash, such as third-level education. So made his name and made his way as a writer from that point onwards. And he wrote a number of notable plays, such as The Rivals, St. Patrick's Day, The School for Scandal, Pizarro, about the Spanish conquest of Peru, and on and on. So he was elected to Parliament, represented Ilchester and a number of other constituencies, served for 32 years. Now, he was an ally of Charles James Fox, a Whig, and then when it came to the American Revolution, Sheridan was a staunch advocate of the cause of the Continental Congress. So was Fox. He often used to appear in the uniform of the Continental Army, i.e. the precursor of the United States Army, to signify their support for the 13 colonies, severing their links with Great Britain. Anyway, Sheridan, he married at the age of 21, someone he'd fallen in love with, and someone had insulted his fiancée. He challenged this chap to a duel, Matthews, a scabrous journalist, and they tried to fight a duel somewhere, but it was so crowded that it was impractical. They went to the Pillars of Hercules Tavern, which is not where it currently stands in Fitzrovia, which was just over there, about a quarter of a mile, on the side of what Apsley House is and the Duke of Wellington's townhouse, but that didn't really go well. At one point, the other chap, Matthews, had to beg for his life, and they had another duel later on. Woo! Anyway, finally it was over. Honour was satisfied. So he married. He had children. His first wife died. Then he married again. But his second wife, she was carrying on an affair with Lord Edward Fitzgerald, the citizen lord, one of the United Irishmen, as in who was later concerned in the 1798 rebellion, who was later killed whilst resisting arrest in 1798. So he was cuckolded, and his wife bore a child who was sired by her paramour, Lord Edward Fitzgerald. Lord Edward was a scion of the noblest family in Ireland. His father was the Duke of Leinster, as in Ireland's premier peer. But back to Sheridan. He didn't always live here. He lived elsewhere. I think he lived in Soho for a while. But he was voted out of Parliament, and he was severely in debt. Remember, debt was a criminal matter till the 1820s. So there's a great danger of being thrown into Marshalsea prison like John Dickens, father of Charles, or possibly Newgate prison. So because you wouldn't be released until such time as your debts were discharged or your creditors forgave you. So you think very carefully about borrowing money. And he'd always been spending it extravagantly, living high on the hog from the day he married, hoping that he could pay it off. And it had worked for quite a long time. When he was out of Parliament, he was out of favour, and bankrupts were not allowed to seek election. So the United States Congress offered to pay his debts of £20,000, which is a huge sum of money, because they're very grateful to him for his zealous advocacy of American independence. But it was an offer that he gratefully declined. Perhaps he was too proud to accept it. Anyway, he died in much reduced circumstances in 1802, and he's laid to rest in Westminster Abbey. So, although he was greatly appreciated as a writer in his time, his plays are scarcely ever performed these days. But that title of Rivals was later used by James Naughtie, the journalist, for the rivalry between Tony Blair and Gordon Brown. Right, as you can see, that General John Burgoyne had lived in here sometime earlier. A notable figure in the American Revolution, of course, been trying to repress the American Revolution. So perhaps a curious irony that Sheridan should have moved in here. That's enough. Toodaloo.